Those sound really good. So, welcome to the Under the Influencers podcast. My name is Brandon Bruffett. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting with a local man of influence, old schooler in the New Orleans comedy scene, Isaac Kozell. How you doing, Isaac?
I'm good, dude. How are you?
Good, very good, man. I'm excited about this conversation, bro. You're definitely one of the people that I guess carries a big stick around here.
I hate it. I hate that label.
I hear you.
I told you this when you said what the theme of the podcast
Right.
was. I was like,
Right.
let's do it, but I'm gonna try to argue against the premise. I think.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
I love it because I'm kind of a contrarian myself.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not really a contrarian. I'm just here to pose an argument. You know, and I think that's maybe to help see other sides of things.
Sure.
But when I tell you what made me notice your influence was because I was hitting open mics constantly. You not as much.
No.
But you're real seasoned. And then we went into stay-home orders. I had not even met you at that point.
Right.
But I was noticing that you were doing this. It was like judging people's meals. They were snapping pictures of meals.
That started from me talking shit,
Okay.
and then it became a whole thing. Yeah.
Okay, that's some of the best things.
Yeah.
Some of the best things happen that way, man.
Yeah.
That's how this started.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, because you remember in the pandemic, people were at home and people started baking bread and cooking more and all that. And I was like, man, good on all of you for cooking so much. However, the pictures look like shit. Like people were taking pictures. They'd be like, all right, here's my recipe. Here's the whole meal I did. And then they'd post a picture and it was like in a dark room with a full flash. And you could see every nasty piece of crud on the plate.
Yeah.
And the food did not look good. And so I just said, if you're going to post pictures of food, take better pictures. Everything you guys are making looks like shit. So then people were just like, they took that as a challenge.
Yeah.
And it went on for months. I was getting tagged in all these pictures of like, it went like locally viral because then people that I didn't even know started tagging. Like, hey.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. People would add me on Facebook and then be like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, this is why we're friends on Facebook now, just so I can like make fun of your food. And it
That's
just,
great. That's great. So, when I was telling people that you were coming on the podcast, man, one of the things that I was told to ask you about is the virtual crawfish boil.
At the Lafayette Science Museum.
But
Yes.
okay, so tell me about this. I'm intrigued. Somebody started to tell me the story last night, and I was like, no, don't. I want Isaac to tell me.
So I went to Lafayette. It was like right pre-pandemic, and I had a show that night.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, what are we going to do during the day? So my girlfriend and I, we went and got food. We're like, let's go check out the Science Museum, because we looked it up online, and it said that it said aquarium, it said like all this stuff, NASA exhibit, all this stuff. So we're like, let's just go kick around at the at the Science Museum. We get in the Science Museum, and I was so surprised at the lack of science. Like the exhibits were like real bad, like sixth grade science fair level exhibits. Like the aquarium was a virtual aquarium, which was a TV no bigger than this one over here. So maybe like, like a 42-inch TV that was playing not even video of actual fish, but what looked like the Windows screensaver for fish, like the fish tank. Yeah, it was very like Finding Nemo-y. Like it was CGI fish swimming around. Like that was the aquarium.
It's like that is actually Nemo.
Yeah, it was really, I was like, all right, so it's not too hard like in Lafayette to get live fish and put in a tank. So I was like, okay, well, they're a little bare bones on that one. And then we saw a couple other exhibits. One was like, guess how long it takes garbage to decompose. And you would just flip a little card. So it'd be like a dirty diaper. And then you would guess, I think it's 7 years. And then you would flip it and it would be like 42 years. And it was just a big bummer of an exhibit. And then we see a line forming. So we get in line and we get around the corner and it is a VR setup, but it's just one set of goggles and one set of headphones. So everybody has to wait in line to do this like VR thing. And you could choose which ones you wanted to do. There was a swamp tour. There was other stuff. I chose the
virtual reality swamp tour.
Yeah, which is just like drone footage, like going through the bayou.
Yeah.
I chose the virtual crawfish boil, and you strap on the headphones, you hit play, and then it just zooms in, like it's like a drone shot, zooms in, and there's these two guys around a boil pot, and they turn and they just start, talking coon-ass to you, and they're just stirring and throwing ingredients in, and they're saying, you can't handle the spice or whatever. That was a science exhibit, was just two good old boys just making crawfish. And the embarrassing thing was I'm standing there just like laughing at this thing, and then I take the goggles and headphones off, I turn around, and there's just a line of people waiting to do what I just did. Like, we waited in line. I wanted to tell everybody, guys, just go to a crawfish boil. Like, you don't have to do this.
There's one happening right down the street.
Exactly.
You're in Lafayette.
Yeah. So when I go, like, the first couple times back to Lafayette after that, I would just do a whole, like, 5-minute chunk on how bad their science museum was.
Yeah, that's great. I'm blown away. Virtual swamp tour when you could have probably just taken 10 or 15 steps and you'd have been in one.
Hop on a fan boat. It's $20. It's more fun.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe the science in the science museum. It was so funny.
Well, I mean, leave it to Louisiana and our forward education.
Right.
We're showing good things in the statistics.
Right.
So Lafayette, you are not only do you do a lot of shows around here, you do Stone vs. Drunk vs. Sober.
Right.
You do Comedy Beast. Is that you?
I do it occasionally, but that is Allison Hotard and Amanda G.
Okay,
that run that.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry, I misspoke on that. We'll have to edit that out. What other shows are you involved with here other than in Proving Ground and which is one of the best open mics consistently?
We try. It's tough. We went Jazz Fest into the heat of summer, so the crowds have been a little rowdier lately. And and we really try to run it like an actual show, even though it's a mic. We have 2 feature comedians every week. And then with Shep Kelly and D.C. Paul helping produce and co-host, I mean, it's just like the vibe, the energy is so good. We try to keep that up. We play music, we got the lights right, we got our graphics up, just to make it feel like not a regular mic, to give the comics and the audience a feeling of a real show, but it's still a mic. So we do that every Sunday. I've got Wait What, which is a comedy drinking game with Geoffrey Gauchet.
Yeah.
And then I have the distillery show at Bayou Terrebonne Distillers in Houma as well, which is like one of those, I mean, get out to like some of the suburbs and small towns if you're a comic and find a good room with people that want to work with you, because people come out to that shit. I mean, that show, we have probably between 100 and 150 people every time we do the show. And it's different people.
That's the Houma show.
That's the Houma show.
I hear great things about that room.
It is so much fun. And the guys there, like, shout out to Noah, who, like, runs the distillery. They make amazing cocktails. They have an amazing house bourbon. So it's like you go there, you get incredible drinks and a really good show. The production level's super high for that. We got, like, it's a big, like, warehouse distillery thing. So we set it up like a comedy show, but there's a lot of space in there.
Yeah.
So they have like a Jumbotron that's playing the show. So if you're in the back of the room, you can see it in case you can't see through the crowd. Yeah. They also play it out in the bar. So if you go out to get a drink, you can still hear and watch the show while you're out there. Just really like top level in Houma. Like, people in other cities, like people can be shitty about small towns and stuff. There are very talented people who care about fun shit in other cities. Right. And like Houma is a great example of it, because the people there are just like, yes, give us more entertainment. We want more stuff here. Yeah. So that one's
small
going really
towns
well.
are dying for something to do, man.
I know.
I'm originally from West Monroe. And you want to talk about a vacuum of entertainment.
Yeah.
But not too long ago, I went up there. I guess this was a year and a half ago. I went up there and discovered this amazing place called The Hub. And the place was beautiful. A bar up front, had two big event halls, one really big one, and then one that would have been perfect for comedy. But now, since going through, COVID, the place is shut down.
Yeah.
Which is really a shame. It was the one thing that made me look at a place like Monroe and go, hell, I could come back here from time to time.
Sure.
Because I mean, I left there when I was 18 and really never looked back. But whatever. I mean, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, really about the only two places in Louisiana that seem to matter. So
and that's a shame, because there's so many cool things to do and see outside of those areas. Baton Rouge has its own stuff, but like it's when you talk about a vacuum, I feel like Baton Rouge is. So I'd rather go to Lafayette than Baton Rouge.
Absolutely.
I just feel like the culture is stronger there. The people that come out to shows, especially, are they're way more fun and way more supportive in Louisiana compared to Baton Rouge. Not saying that Baton Rouge isn't good. They have a nice little comedy scene there. There's some good dudes.
Oh, yeah.
That are doing stand up, and they have some good shows, but. It just doesn't hit there the same.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how to describe it. It's such a big place, and it just the ratio seems off to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I lived in Baton Rouge for a while, and it's just so much of the same person. You know, over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's just the same person, be it male or female. Lafayette, though, great scene. I haven't had the pleasure of performing over there yet, but man, I mean, the traffic that Jason Leonard is producing over there is
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable, yeah.
I mean, what he's done in Lafayette, which if you're not from this area, is 2.5 hours away from New Orleans. It is insane how much he has done for the New Orleans scene just by bringing acts to Lafayette. I mean, he brings headliners that aren't thinking about fucking with New Orleans, but then they get to Lafayette, they see what he does, and then they're like, oh, maybe while I'm down here, I'll hit New Orleans as well. So we get a lot of runoff from him bringing in huge names who come down here to perform and party. I think when they get their big show in Lafayette done, like the hotel show at Club 337, that room fits like 300 people. Somebody will come down, they'll sell out a couple shows there, they'll make their nut for the weekend, and then they'll be like, I want to see what New Orleans is doing. They come in, they drop in on one of our shows that has like 50, 60 people, or they book a small spot for themselves just as bonus, and they have a blast. But that's all because Jason brings them to our area in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
it's
amazing.
insane. I understand he was doing music before. Is that
Dude used to tour the world with his band.
Really?
He's been all over the place, and I think that's where he learned how to effectively book and promote and ask for the right stuff from venues and work with agents and all that. So his business end of comedy is top notch. It really is.
So how did you get into comedy?
I started. I'm about like 10 years now. And I started in Wheeling, West Virginia, of all places, and I wasn't planning to start comedy. I was doing PR work for a law firm. And so I was in the public a lot, doing a lot of stuff with like charities and live events and all that. So I would facilitate cocktail hours, host, things like that, never thinking about stand-up. And I also was a pastor. So I was used to being on stage. I was a preacher, whatever. So I was very comfortable, getting up at like a banquet and doing something before we bring up whoever's being honored or whatever. So there was a guy that was doing a charity comedy show in a town that never had comedy. There's no comedy scene in Wheeling, West Virginia. And he said, I want to do this charity comedy show. Would you host it? And I said, well, sure, that sounds right. But then I was like, well, shit, I don't have jokes. Like, I've never done stand-up.
Yeah.
So I wrote an act to be in the host set, ate my dick. It was so bad. It was so not funny. A buddy of mine was down visiting recently, and he still had the picture of the first time I ever did stand-up. And I'm wearing, I was trying to look like I didn't know what a comedian looked like.
Right.
So I was wearing, jeans with a suit jacket and a dress shirt and a skinny tie and a cabbie hat. And I was just like, is this what a comic looks like, I mean, it was so embarrassing, and the jokes were awful. And I realized that, I loved it. I did not do well, but it was so much fun.
Right.
And so after that, I started, because I worked in Pittsburgh. I lived about 45 minutes to an hour outside of Pittsburgh, and I worked there 3 days a week. I would commute back and forth. And I was like, I did it one time. I was bad at it, but I got the bug. So I just started hitting the open mics in Pittsburgh after work.
Yeah.
I'd get off work, find where an open mic was, hit the mic, and then just, you do that enough. You start meeting comics. You start getting 3 minutes of good jokes, 5 minutes of good jokes.
Yeah.
And then Pittsburgh's where I really got my footing. That was my first actual scene. Was Pittsburgh.
Yeah, much better scene than Wheeling, West Virginia.
I mean, they
sure.
had a club. They had improv and stand-up theaters. They had a bunch of cool rooms, really great like bars and breweries and things like that. They were doing shows. And when I started to see what was available in that city for stand-up, it was like a kid in a candy store. Because it's like a lot of cool places. Like some of my favorite music venues where I would go see bands, I would be able to go do stand-up on those stages. And it just felt so cool.
Right.
Especially in the beginning. I mean, everything is magic in the beginning.
Right.
So it was
just
it was
like
a blast.
any relationship, right?
Right?
Yeah. So, West Virginia, where are you originally from?
I was born in Wheeling.
Okay.
Yeah, I was born in
Okay.
Wheeling, and I grew up in a small town called Moundsville, which is like a little coal mining town right on the Ohio River.
All right.
Where the West Virginia Penitentiary is, the big one that's in like all of like the serial killer shows and like, you know, there's like Stephen King movies and stuff, and they'll have like a lot of stuff is shot there because they shut down the pen, but they use it for filming and like training and stuff like that now, and you can do like
that's
haunted
cool.
tours and all that. But it's kind of wild because it is a giant menacing castle of a building. You know,
Right.
it's a very incredible building. And my grade school was directly across the street from it. And there was a prison break when I was in kindergarten.
It's like an odd place.
Dude, it was a fully functioning prison. And they had a school right across the street from it. And there were some trustees that were working in the greenhouse. And over the course of like a few weeks, they had been digging a hole under the wall. And they got out. And one day, kindergarten, waiting to get picked up. All of a sudden, it's like sheriffs, cops, helicopters, and they were checking us all out individually, making sure our parents were taking us home, and they were rerouting traffic. And we're like, what the hell is going on? And it turned out that like two of these guys had busted out. You know?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Straight Shawshank Redemption style,
Yeah,
huh?
absolutely.
Fucking
absolutely.
right,
I mean,
man.
seriously, covered in dirt. They built a tunnel under the wall, and these walls are these thick, like sandstone walls. So I don't know how far they would have had to go down to get under it, but they figured it out and got out.
And this isn't the infamous prison with the inmate that is gonna get that butt.
What is this? No, I don't know the reference. What are you talking
This
about? What?
it's locked up. Locked up is the show, and there's this man the description of the prison sounds spot on, but there's this inmate they talk to, and he's been the subject of a whole bunch of memes and parodies, and but he's this older black guy, and he's just kind of, you know, he's institutionalized as hell.
Yeah.
He's got these thick glasses on, and he's just like, man, you come in here, man, I'm gonna get that butt. And it's the way that he says it. It's like he spits his bottom lip out, and I'm gonna get that butt.
That's a good, yeah.
And I'm like,
What's a fun word to populate that?
butt?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think so, because if it was on locked up, that prison shut down when I was either in junior high or early high school. So that would have been like in the 90s.
Yeah.
So I don't think that would be it.
It's
Yeah.
probably too late. Yeah, they had to build a new, streamlined, more secure prison
On the
fit more
outskirts of
people.
town.
Yeah.
Yep, right on the
Yeah.
edge of town, at the base of a hill by a creek. They put in like the new prison.
Yeah.
This is kind of wild though. I, when I was a kid, was not a bad kid, but just kind of like hyper talkative, goofy,
Uh-huh.
And they were doing, and the prison was still open. They were doing the Scared Straight program at the time,
Yeah.
which I do not think. I mean, we're kind of the same age. Like you
Yeah.
remember the Scared Straight program,
Yeah.
and I don't even know if that's legal anymore, but. They had a quota because it's like, for the grant for the program, you have to put so many kids in there. So like, of course, all the bad kids in school, the kids that were setting trash cans on fire and beating
Yeah.
people up and, throwing scissors at teachers and stuff, they all were put in the program.
Throwing scissors at teachers.
They did, but then they needed, that's real.
Yeah,
This
I
kid
believe
Willie, I went to school with, teacher was being mean to him. He just opened up a pair of scissors and right into the chocolate.
Just like a butterfly knife.
Yeah, dude. He had butterfly. He was like the only kid with a switchblade. You know what I mean? He was that kid.
He had a butterfly knife.
Yep,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
And he could do all the tricks and all that.
Yeah.
But they needed a couple more kids to fill the quota, so I got put in the Scared Straight program
Hell
with,
yeah,
with
with your
all of my
talkative ass.
bullies. With
Yeah.
all of my bullies,
Nice,
right?
nice.
And
Yeah.
they took us into that prison with actual prisoners interacting with us. The idea was to scare us.
Yeah.
And so the prisoners had permission to say whatever. I'm in 4th grade. I'm like 9, 10 years old. And we walk through one of the wings, and all the guys had just gotten out of the shower.
Yeah.
So they walk us through the wet showers, and there's, soap and hair and cum and all this shit in the shower. And then the guys it's like 3 tiers of cells.
Yeah.
And the guys are up there looking down over the wall of the shower, and they're saying all kinds of nasty stuff to us. There's a guy running his dick across the bars like a xylophone.
yeah.
Like, I was like,
He was gonna get that butt.
he's going to get that butt.
He's gonna
Yeah,
get
that little
butt, yeah.
chubby boy butt.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it was like, even as a kid, I'm like, this isn't scary as much as inappropriate. Like, I don't think I'm supposed to see and hear these
Yeah.
things. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
and we were just laughing too. That was the other thing. Like, nobody was scared. Like, they
Right.
had a guy come around the corner, and he had like a mop, and then he jumps around the corner, and the mop handle's broken, and he's kind of like doing this, like,
Oh,
I'll
God.
get you. It was like he
Yeah.
was an actor or whatever.
Like a
for the
haunted
thing.
house.
Yes, it was like
of
that's what they were
jails,
trying
yeah.
to do, and we were just laughing the whole
Yeah.
time. I mean, especially that dick on the bars. I mean, just like right across
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, you couldn't show that to a kid. I mean, you can't do that now,
No.
right? I mean, I
No.
think that's good. Maybe sometimes we're like, boy, it was so much better in the old days, but I don't know if that is so good.
Man, back in the day, you could just walk off with armfuls of children.
yeah.
I mean, you really could.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I was about 10 or 11 years old at a family house party. You know, just friends of my dad's or whatever. And I've got one toe that kind of goes in under the other toes.
All right.
And I was walking around barefooted, and this guy walked up to me. He's like, "Oh man, you gonna have to get that fixed. That's gonna fuck up your fuck stick." Now he said this to me in a living room full of other adults. Basically, what he had me believing was that there was a cord that went from my penis to my big toe, and because my big toe was pulling that way, that it was gonna pull my pecker over
Right.
to the left.
Like the string trick where you pretend you have string and it like does this. Like it's
Right.
like that is good. Yeah.
Exactly. So he was like, there's only one thing you can do about that. You know, you're gonna have to get it fixed. But in the meantime, you're gonna have to flick at it until it gets stiff.
Oh.
And then you're gonna have to pull it over to the right. And he was like, if you do that, maybe it'll straighten that toe out a little bit.
Oh, my God.
And man, I mean, to make the thing worse is like his girlfriend come over and, oh yeah, baby,
Oh man.
hey, you're gonna have to do something about that. I can see where this is gonna go.
God
Yeah,
damn.
yeah, man. I mean, but back then you could talk to kids however the hell you wanted.
That is
Yeah.
wild.
It is one of the wildest things. Like, I'd never heard the word "fuck" used so rapidly,
Yeah, and then fuck stick.
but I knew exactly what he meant.
Sure.
You know, it was like,
Yeah,
"These
context
motherfuckers
clues."
making fun of my foot. You know,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, and that sounds like a story about how two rednecks, got a child to masturbate, but really it's just a story about how two responsible individuals taught a kid how to be ambidextrous.
Well, and here's that. So that story does have a happy ending.
It does.
And as a surprise,
Two
that couple
happy
is here
endings.
today. Come on in, folks.
Yeah. Hey! Yeah. Those are the kind of people that you don't see in adulthood because there's maybe there's
Well,
things
now they
that
just
you're
do it
doing.
on the internet. They
Right,
just go to a chat
right.
room and yeah.
Or they're in jail.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad hung out with some questionable characters growing up. So so a pastor.
Oh yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I was born into it. I was a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
And so my whole family, they were all Jehovah's Witnesses. I was born into it. My dad, my grandfather, my uncles, they were all pastors, elders in the church. So it was all I knew. So
Yeah.
from the time you're a little boy in that church, you're just being set up to become a pastor.
Right.
Like that's the end goal. Like that's like, what you are reaching for.
Okay.
There's no focus on like careers or college or anything. It's just like they keep giving you little jobs around the church, and then you learn to run the sound department, and then you start giving like sermons, and then you just kind of become like this Swiss Army knife for the church, and that
Right.
is the greatest goal of service to the Lord is just to keep climbing the ranks, right? So by the time I gave my first on-stage little sermon thing, I think when I was like 4, it was like a little Bible reading with some
Wow.
commentary. And then, so I started at 4 on stage and then
Wow.
just was on a stage ever since. So when I left the church, I think that stand-up filled a void for me. I didn't want to be a pastor anymore. I felt like
Yeah.
I was lying to people. It felt very disingenuous. And ideologically, I was kind of on my way out of that belief system. But I needed something. I didn't know I needed it, but it seems like if I look at the timeline, it's like I started doing stand-up as I was making my exit from the church.
Yeah.
And it was some kind of like safety net or a cushion or like, an exit ramp into something new
Yeah.
that felt the same.
I was going to ask, you say a safety net, and that's because we're constantly looking for something to comfort us.
Sure.
But do you feel that it escorted you away from the church in any way?
I think mentally it did because, when your whole belief system starts to crumble,
Yeah.
you sort of go insane, right? I was having like multiple existential crises like over
Yeah.
the course of several years. And then because you're not supposed to read any outside literature, you're not supposed to, watch certain movies or interact with certain people. So I started breaking all those boundaries like secretly. And the more that I did that, I'm like, oh my God, there's this whole world out here. There's these truths that I did not know existed. And we thought we had the whole truth. And part of stand-up, I think, is finding different ways to think about similar subjects because we all have these similar life experiences and same premises for things, and we all hear the same news and see the same stuff in the world. So
Yo, we've all got the same internet.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So I think that processing like all the things in the world, I did it through this lens of the church for so long, and then stand-up gave me a way to look at it differently.
Your own lens.
Which was, at the beginning, a very hard pendulum swing to just being super critical and snarky. I went through that like militant atheist phase, where I was just an asshole to anybody that believed anything, because I was like, you're being lied to, all that shit. I've way chilled out on that now.
Yeah.
But stand-up helped me start like feeling like I had my own voice. This sounds so stupid what I'm saying. It's
no, man,
like,
it's
you know what I mean? It's like I'm not trying to make it like, we do this goofy, fun, dumb thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I, people are like, it's an art and it's this. It is kind of, but also it's a foolish pursuit and it's a silly dream. But it has subconsciously filled some big gaps in my life, and I think that's why I still do it.
Man, just the exploration of thought, which is something that's so. Well, it's something that's so prohibited in the religions. I'm definitely a Southern boy all the way, brought up in the Bible Belt, and exposed to all the religions that a small Southern town has to offer. Pentecostal and Southern Baptist, of course. It's and those same things, when you start to break those ideologies and get into your own realm of thinking, there is you start to question your not only your validity as a person, but also your worth, your moral worth as a person,
or your future, or what happens to you after you die.
Yeah.
I had all the answers to that. I thought, right? Like I thought I knew that everything I was doing was right, and there was going to be this big payoff, like I'm going to survive Armageddon, and I'm going to live in this paradise Earth where I'll have like every animal that I want and a big house, and all my neighbors will be good people because we all believe the same, and blah, 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 and all my dead friends and family members are going to be resurrected and all that. And there's a hope in that that's very comforting. And then once I realized that that's probably not how it's going to turn out, there was just this deep sadness because like, then what,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's tough. And then so that sent me into like philosophy and all that, where it's just like I went through like that big like, I went through a bunch of like, Sartre books and things like that. That was just like, Nietzsche. It's like, well, life is meaningless. You're all that matters. Everything is on your own. Like just try to be a decent person, but also look out for number one. Like it's weird how the brain will shift to the complete opposite thing, which then becomes a whole other ideology. So now I'm just kind of like, I've kind of landed in the soft middle where it's like, I don't really believe in anything, which it was just tough sometimes with like stand up where people be like, or even if you're online, people are like, how come you're not commenting on this or that? It's like, cause I truly don't know the truth about a lot of things.
Right.
So my opinion also does not matter that much. I don't think you want to hear my hot take on Roe versus Wade. Right? Like I'm not the guy to tell you about that. You know what I mean? Like I try to, I do have opinions about it and I try to support causes that I agree with, but I do most of that very quietly because I don't think I need to be some kind of like megaphone for these dumb ideas in my head. I'm not going to change the world. So
Yeah, just because I have a voice doesn't mean it needs to be heard on everything.
Well, don't you wish more people said that? I mean, my God,
man, it's quite refreshing, honestly. It shows wisdom. A wise man knows that he's not smart enough to know everything.
Yeah,
you know, and it's very few. I find that so many people today they love to hear themselves talk.
This is coming from a podcaster.
Yeah, and this is like I was saying, man. This is so foreign to me. I feel so out of place in this, but I'm definitely it affords me the opportunity to have conversations with people that I normally wouldn't have.
But that being said, you're a good conversationalist. So like outside of shows, we have very quickly just gotten into like fun conversations and interesting conversations. And I think that whether you feel like, podcasting is a good fit for you or not, you do bring something to the table because you have like, got these nice southern dulcet tones and it's a comforting voice to listen to and you're easy to talk to.
Oh, well, thank you, man. Tell that to my ex. She would not agree.
Well, we're not fucking. So
I think
that like
exactly that's it.
Gets a little, it gets
that's
tricky
right.
when,
That's right. That's it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you have a girlfriend. And how long have y'all been together?
We have been together for 3 years and January, February, March, April, almost 3.5 years at this point.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we met pre-pandemic and we got through pandemic together, which was like a lot of relationships around us were crumbling during pandemic. These horror stories of people that broke up, but they were in lockdown together, so they still have to live in the same place and all that. And, not that pandemic was easy on anybody, but like it somehow, all that chaos and stress and being forced to be together and up each other's asses all the time, like made us stronger, I think, which was good because we're both busy people. We have different jobs, we have different interests, and a lot of those things overlap, but we both are independent and like our own space and time.
Yeah.
And somehow all that forced time together, I think it made us realize how much we truly loved each other and enjoy each other's company, which is great because, the dream for me is like somebody that I can have all kinds of fun with. We can do things, dinners, shows, whatever. But then you also can sit quietly in the same room and not feel the pressure to talk and not feel uncomfortable.
Right.
I like being around people but not having to interact with people.
Yeah.
And we do that very well.
That's amazing. The forced conversation, and I appreciate you saying that I'm a good conversationalist. I try. I don't want to talk about bullshit. I've got I know the answer to how you doing.
Yes.
I know that answer. I've heard it from a million people a million times. Let's talk about some real shit. We're much the same age. How old are you?
I'm 42.
42, so I'm just a little bit older, motherfucker. but yeah, we both got the grays in the beard.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite jokes that you do is the Dave and Buster's and being around kids.
Yeah.
To me, that shows such a great juxtaposition because you're an adult, but you're in a playland. And then bothered by the kids that are there.
That is supposed to be for adults. That's my point of contention, and that's the issue with that bit is that everything I say in that bit is true. I've been to Dave & Buster's. Kids have like bumped up against me with some kind of sticky ice cream shit or spilled drinks on me, and the thing I say in the joke about the kids hogging up the Jurassic Park game. That's where I started that joke because me and my friend went to Dave & Buster's specifically to get drunk and beat Jurassic Park. Like we bought players cards. We're going to put $40 a piece on these cards. We're going to get a pitcher of beer and we're going to sit and we're going to play this game until it's done.
$40 a piece, yeah.
I mean, we were ready. We were balling that night, right?
Yeah.
Like this is like it's balling on a budget, like as B-Dub says. But like that was the whole
Shouts
plan.
Out to B-Dub.
Yes, B-Dub.
Yeah.
So we go there and we walk up to the Jurassic Park game, and these kids are sitting in there, and the game is just playing the previews of the game. It's just showing action scenes from the game, and then it would go high score, and then go put your dollar in, whatever. And the kids were just holding the guns and the steering wheels, and they're just like, ah! And after a while, I'm like, hey, are you guys playing this game? Which I know they're not. They didn't pay. They're just watching the previews, pretending to play. And they said, yeah, we're playing the game. And I'm like, fuck these. And that's where I said, it's like, fuck these kids. And like, that's where that joke came from, which is like, these kids should not be allowed in Dave & Buster's, at least after a certain period of time, right? Like at 6 p.m., no kids. Let it be adult time. Because like, we want to play video games too, right? Like, that's how I feel about it. But also, I'm a cranky old bastard in situations like that. I won't take a big stand on a lot of issues publicly, but I will die screaming how Dave and Buster's should change their policy for
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
Like, these are the things that matter to me, which is ridiculous. But
Yeah.
like, that's what I get fired up about. It's just stupid inconveniences.
And there, I always thought that the place was for adults only. I guess that was a childish assumption.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was and the first time that I went in there, I was like, "What in the hell?" It's the same reaction. What in the hell are these kids
It's
doing here?
terrible.
Yeah. Well, I think children are highly problematic. So that's just my stance. So any kids?
No kids.
No
kids.
ever
I
married?
never I was married. I was married for 13 years.
Really?
Yeah. Got married in the church when I was in my early 20s.
Wow, that is
Yeah.
in your early 20s. Wow.
Yeah. Well, everybody gets married young in that church because you're not allowed to do anything. You're not supposed to
Yeah.
like make out or finger or fuck or anything fun.
So
So what you have to do,
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, you're not supposed to do any of that. And so what you have to do is you try to figure out, what does this person look like naked? You
Yeah.
have to figure that out. So, you invite them like, hey, how about a pool party? We'll go to the pool. And you're like, all right, okay, this is good. And then it's like, all right, you start spending time with them and then you fall in love. But there's nothing physical, and you're supposed to have a chaperone around the whole time. So it's really hard to even sneak around to goof off, So...
Yeah, you can't make out behind a tree when the third person is behind the tree.
Or in the tree.
Yeah,
watching
yeah,
it. Yeah, I
in the
mean,
tree.
it's like, my God, it's very sexually repressive, that church. So, it's kids get married young because they're just so horny. It's like, we've been
Yeah.
dating for 7 months and we both believe the same things. Let's get married, and that happens a lot. And most of the people I know that got married in the church around the same time as me, like all of my friends, every single couple that we were close to, they've also divorced and moved on.
Oh, yeah.
Because, that's not a sustainable way of doing things. Now, my ex-wife, amazing woman, and we both kind of left the church together, and we grew together. But then there was a point where, after all of that growth, we then grew apart.
Yeah.
Because I think that, and especially from her side, she looked at it like, I'm not the same person that you married in terms of the way I view the world, the way I view the idea of having a husband, and I was like, that sucks, but okay, we'll try.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, if that's what you want, that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
But I think 13 years is good for, given like how we were raised,
Yeah.
to both get out and be like mentally free and successful people now in life. Excuse me. Leave that in.
Yeah.
Leave that in. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think we both survived it. Maybe the marriage didn't survive it, but like we both, and I see her, she lives here now, and I see her around. I ran into her at Lowe's, ran into her at a parade. We're on good terms, supportive, and there's still a lot of love there, but
Yeah.
it's just not that like romantic love that can sustain a marriage.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. I'm not sure that anything can sustain a marriage. Well, I mean, we talk about how about 50% of marriages end in divorce.
Yeah.
But we never mention all of the relationships that fail in order to get to that one.
Sure.
I
I mean,
and-
yeah, sometimes people don't find their till death partner until they've had 3 before that.
Right.
And there's, and
By
some,
then you're just so old, you're definitely going to die with this person.
Oh, sure.
It's like,
well, I mean, I have a joke with one of my buddies where it's like, if the relationships we're in now, and he has a wife and a kid and all that, I'm like, if at any point this doesn't work out and you and I are in our golden years and we are single, we're going to get gay married. And
Right.
just so that we would have that
Right.
companionship, we know we can get along. We're going
Yeah.
to be too old to fuck at that point anyway.
Right.
So it's just going to be like two bros
Yeah.
reliving the college experience that we
Right.
didn't have together, right?
oh yeah, you might as well get the tax benefits off of it. you
Sure,
know?
yes.
That's
Yes.
no question.
Yeah.
No question. It's I mean,
I'm going to grab another beer.
yeah, go for it, man. Yeah. That's funny.
That was awesome. Oh shit.
Yeah, I've always heard that is the benefit to marriage. Yeah. So yeah, 13 years, man. That really is, and to go through the realization that everything that you had been brought up on is really not feasible.
Oh, for sure.
What do you think was the driving factor? What made you finally just leave the church?
The higher up that I got, the more exposed I was to the inner workings of the church, right? So I saw things on the business end that made me uncomfortable. I saw things on, I guess, what you would call the bureaucratic end of it, because it is a corporation. Absolutely. And so when I would see people have issues with, like, you know, if somebody sinned and they confessed their sin, they would have to go through some type of like judicial committee where they sit down with like 3 of the elders and they go through all the details of the sin. You can't just say, hey, I fucked up, I'm sorry, I've been praying to God for forgiveness, and they say, bless you, keep on the straight path. You know, like it's not that. They have to get into your business, and sometimes these things are very tricky situations. And I know of people who have gone through traumatic life experiences, and if that wasn't bad enough, they have to sit and relive those with the elders. And then sometimes the elders will point out where that person failed. And a lot, like for instance, like, you know, an unmarried woman has sex with somebody outside of marriage, maybe somebody who also is not a Jehovah's Witness. Now that's 2 sins. And they would go through these detailed things asking her, like, you know, well, did you, you know, protest at all? You know, what were you wearing? Kind of like almost like the way people treat women if they've been sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
They would do this. It
sounds like a rape trial almost.
Yeah, it's very much, and that type of like inquisition on somebody who already admitted that they did wrong and didn't want to do it again, to put them through that and then publicly punish them, because if they decide that you sinned, then there's an announcement made at the church, and, you know, this person has been either reproved, which means you went through the process and you've been, you know, deemed worthy to stay in the congregation, or if you. There was an example where a woman got into some issues, a good friend of mine, and she didn't cry during that question and answer thing. And the elders of the church felt like she wasn't truly repentant because she didn't break down crying in front of them. So they kicked her out of the church.
Wow.
So the more that I got involved in the church and in hearing and seeing these things, the more uncomfortable I got with stuff like that. And then there's a lot of like pedophilia scandals and the way they move money around to pay for the lawyers to, you know, shuffle, you know, people around who've done things. I was like, oh, our church is just like every other church. And we were told that we weren't and that we're above all that. And I started to learn that we weren't. And so that really got me looking into the teachings of the church. And then I was like, oh, our doctrine is also a fairy tale, you know?
Yeah.
And so it all just started to unravel very quickly. And I was still preaching at the time. So I was living a double life. I was being a phony. I'd go up and do these sermons about things I didn't believe. And I would see people go, oh, that's so comforting. That's so nice. And I'm like, oh, I'm lying to you. And I'm playing with your emotions. And it felt really bad. So I started changing the sermons. And then the elders noticed I was taking things out of the sermons and replacing them with like Neil Young lyrics and shit. Like I was just
nice.
like, I was trying to be,
Nice.
I was like trying to be, there was like a lot of like Beatles, like John Lennon quotes and stuff, you know, like, cause I was trying to be like more of like the hippie youth pastor kind of guy.
Yeah.
That would just bring comfort to people without being like too dogmatic and beating people over the head with what they should and shouldn't do. And that was frowned upon. It's like, stick to the script. And I'm like, well, I can't stick to the script. I don't, you know, and so I had to leave.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you.
To use a comedy term, I felt like a hack, right? I felt like a hack because I was up there. I knew this stuff would kill. I knew it would work. But I didn't feel good about doing it. It felt very cheap and disingenuous to do.
Yeah.
So I was a hack pastor.
Well, at least you got the stage time.
Oh yeah,
You know, that's,
yeah.
Like, thank God.
And the thing is, it doesn't pay, but my God, the exposure.
Yeah, yeah. Did you bring any of those fans over?
Yeah.
That's I mean, boy, if we could get those crowds, well, I don't know, a mega church crowd.
Oh, that would be a blast. Could you imagine how fun that would be?
Holy shit!
God.
You know, with a live band.
Oh yes.
Can't beat it, man.
Yeah.
You know, which is, if I'm not mistaken, which is the live band aspect, I believe that's frowned upon by thy Lord and Savior. You know, amplified music.
I didn't hear about one tambourine in the gospel, so I don't think that, like, you know, there was never. I mean, he did a lot of cool shit at those like rallies, but I don't think that he ever.
Those rallies.
Well, you know what I mean. Like, you know, he would just roll into town and just hop up on a stone and be like, "Yo, fish and wine for everybody." I mean, like, he was throwing parties, but there wasn't like, you never really heard about like, you know, John and the Jug Band 5 or who, I don't know what
Yeah,
instruments
yeah.
they had back there. The lute, I don't know what they were playing.
He had an entourage, but man, like all those guys, they were just a bunch of pussies, really. I mean, you figure it's like one of those guys is a snitch. You'd figure out of the other 11 that somebody would have whipped his ass. I mean, but nothing. They're just like,
And then in terms of like the theme of this podcast, like Jesus was like the ultimate influencer, right?
Yeah.
And then he had all these people just doing, whatever. They were just so locked into what he was doing.
Yeah.
And like
but even he was getting them drunk. I mean, that's basically date raping. I don't,
Also, he wore flip flops a lot, which
He
I mean,
did, very cash.
Jesus, like maybe that's why I don't like flip flops on stage, because I don't like seeing men with open toes on stage performing, which is just like a personal preference. But like he did that. I think that's why I might have turned on Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're a guy, I don't even need to know. I don't need to know that you have toes or a penis. Honestly, like it's
or that they connect and work. Yeah.
That I definitely don't need to know. I've often said that the church is the original home of the enhanced trip. It's
sure.
it's the original place set up for psychedelic experience.
Absolutely. I mean, you go visit historic churches, and I'm not even a religious person now, but when I walk into a big old grand church, I am taken. It feels something. I mean, those were designed to make you feel a certain way.
Absolutely.
The way the sound bounces around in there, the height, the stained glass,
The stained glass,
everything.
man.
I mean, it's very impressive.
Yeah, I think it's the reason for like a morning sermon. That it seems like the sun travels. You get more of a noticeable distance on the sun. Passing over stained glass, man, early in the morning, power of suggestion, back when they were still like lacing people with psychedelics unknowingly. I think that's how the church is actually losing its grip, is because there's no question now that there, speaking of influence, that people were definitely imbibing things to help them get closer to their gods.
Sure.
And then they just took the drugs away from that and tried to maintain that hold. I don't think you can do that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like a reasonable way to go about that.
I don't either, but of course, drugs aren't for everybody. And if you are a very deeply religious person, a very spiritual person, and you believe in a lot of things like outside of yourself and the universe, the drugs will make you believe those things more, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever you believe. Like a lot of people do psychedelics, and they'll be like, I met God or whatever. It's like, I don't think that you did not believe in God. Maybe you weren't worshiping a God. Maybe you had lost contact with your, sense of God. Or you've just been ingrained with the idea that there might be something bigger. And so when your brain cracks loose from all of that and everything's happening and it seems so exciting, of course you're going to see God if whatever God is to you. It's there in your brain waiting to be released, right? So, I don't know. This part sucks. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Now, man, there's that famous story of Ram Dass going to India, and of course he was real big into LSD, but he's talking to this yogi, and he gives this yogi like this super dose of LSD, and the yogi just kind of fucks with him for a minute. He starts acting all crazy, and he's like, "Oh fuck, I broke this yogi." Yeah, and then turns out that the guy never really even experienced it. He was already there.
Yeah. Well, that's a Vedic thing, right? Like they do that meditation, and they ask these Socratic kind of questions to the point where you question your beliefs, you question your assertions, and then you sit with other thinkers and you break those things down in a very peaceful way. Yeah. It's like, well, here's the logic of that. Would that work? And when they would get on the subject of God or existence or purpose, they would break it down to the point where none of them could even understand the premise of God or the concept of order. And then at that point, that was considered enlightenment. Yeah. That humbling feeling that you truly cannot prove these things. And that's the spiritual experience. You meditate and you think on things and you break them down until there's nothing left. That's where you find God. And so that concept is pretty cool, and you could apply that to almost anything that you do or believe in.
Yeah.
If you're strong enough to do it mentally, because sometimes you do that too much and then you just want to go jump off a bridge, right? Because it's like,
Yeah, definitely. I feel you on that. You were talking about existential crises, a few minutes ago, and man, that was a few years back. I had to deal with my overall irrelevance, my insignificance on a universal level.
Yeah.
The fact that I'll walk around with something in my skull that I will never be able to wrap my head around.
Right.
That's a fucked up notion.
Yeah. Were you on drugs when you had this?
Yes.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm a big believer in drugs, whether it be recreational or purpose driven. So many of us find tremendous benefit therapeutically through whatever. I had been self-medicating with ketamine, and
I thought you were going to say marijuana, and it just meant ketamine.
No, yeah, I'm an old rave kid, so like all of the things that we did for fun back then are now considered therapeutic in some way. Except for that methamphetamine, just stay away from that crazy shit. Yeah. So yeah, the ketamine. I had purchased some from somebody who actually gave me a bag of what turned out to be poison. It was basically the research chemical, the bath salt of ketamine.
Right,
And so I was out eating somebody's face off one night, and I was like, but man, it really did. It stretched my time space out. I mean, I have memories of lives that I lived during that time. I hate that it was that, but it did. It was like a midlife crisis, a midlife crisis, I guess. But they said it was a breakdown. I think it was a breakthrough. I had to see two therapists or two psychologists in like a week, and I told both of them the same thing. It's like, man, look, if you can't talk to me about Schrodinger's cat, then we're out of here, because I don't need a therapist. I need a metaphysicist.
Yeah.
That's what I needed. I was dealing with the fact that I was so minute, so small, that even 1,000 feet off the ground, you don't know that I'm here.
Right.
And that is, man, it's just a fucked up place to be. You're just like, I'm so small that how can I matter?
Yeah, but that's how, and that's one of the reasons why I was like, I want to do the podcast. I want to talk to you about, the concept of influence and whatever. But I had that realization a long time ago that I'm not shit.
Yeah.
So the idea of like, being seen or presenting myself as some kind of like, force or entity or whatever, especially in comedy. It seems so silly to me.
Yeah.
I just do what I think is fun, and I try to make the shows that I do really fun for the comedians and the audience.
Yeah.
And I want the venue to be happy and supportive. I want comics to make money. I want the audience to leave wanting more and want to come back the next time. And I want to be funny. And I just want to throw a party. Every show, whether it's, just going up to host an open mic or, running a show or doing a book show, I just want it to be fun and successful for everybody in every way that they value success, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I have my own priorities for how I gauge success, but, I don't think that makes me anything. You know, I do things very differently than a lot of people, and I also don't tell anybody else like what to do. I have my preferences, and I will stand up for certain principles I have about things, but like also you do what you want to do, I'll do what I want to do, and then we'll see how those shows turn out.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people's a lot of influence is directive. It's somebody casting their their will or their opinions onto somebody else. But when I look at a genuine influence, I feel like the best example is somebody that is just doing their thing and letting other people digest that, absorb that, observe it. it is the best example that we can set without being arrogant.
Right.
And that was that was what I the thing I took away from my big existential crisis was that yeah, we don't matter, but we do. We seem to matter most when we're gone or when we're absent. That's
Right.
when our influence is felt the most.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that can't be. That doesn't need to be forced. The respect is an earned thing, not a forced thing.
Sure.
It's I feel like that's the difference. Is you can look at it almost like the difference between fear and respect. Is like one of those is going to be true, and one of them is only going to be while you're there, while you're in front of that person.
Right. I agree with that. And I also think that concept of respect, it's like, people they'll get to the point where they will physically fight because they feel that they've been disrespected.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes that might be true, but I think you kind of have to put like a buffer in there where you really take a hard look in the mirror and say, am I doing anything that deserves respect? Like, have I earned the respect?
Right.
Or do I just walk around with this preconceived notion of a base level of respect that I should get from everybody all the time?
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily true. Like,
Yeah, no, absolutely, you're right. Oh, I'm sorry.
well, then that's the part where we just stare into each other's souls
Yeah, yeah.
because we just had the Vedic mind blow thing.
yeah.
It's like, whoa, what else do we talk about? Why
Yeah.
are we talking? What is talking?
Definitely, people people say that they give respect. You give respect, and okay, you might give a common courtesy of respect, but you're definitely right in that respect is earned. I will not disrespect you, just off of just because that's how my mama raised me.
Right, yeah.
But like my real respect, just like you said, what are you doing? What am I doing to make anybody else give a shit about me?
Sure.
And that is a part of the reason that I'm doing this, man. Is like I feel at my age that maybe I've started to lose a little bit of the appreciation for. I'm definitely quicker to not appreciate the people around me, and I see that more as I get older. I feel like I'm drawing back from society,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if that's me realizing that I haven't been about shit, or that I'm realizing that the people around me aren't about shit, and I have been buying that influence instead of
Yeah.
setting my own.
Yeah, that happens. That happens in a lot of like creative communities, and I saw this in Pittsburgh with like music and fashion and art. Like a lot of these, there were a lot of young people doing really cool things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they all sort of bonded together and created a scene or multiple scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you realize is that the concept of a scene, a creative scene or a business scene or whatever, the scene becomes this living, breathing thing that dictates what everybody in the scene does under it, right?
Yeah.
Does this make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's a death trap, which is why when people talk about a comedy scene,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very, I don't really like to say like, oh, I'm part of the New Orleans comedy scene.
Yeah.
Because I do a lot of things differently
Mm-hmm.
than a lot of other people. And the idea of a scene, this hive think, this group mind, this don't we all agree on this? Shouldn't we all think that this is the right way or wrong
Right.
way to do things? And then the other thing, if you want to be successful, scenes like that just pass money back and forth to each other. It's the same little tiny pool of money. So it's like, yeah, I'll pay to come see your show. You'll come pay to see my show. I'll buy your T-shirt. You'll buy my T-shirt.
Yeah.
And nobody ever actually grows or succeeds out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that happen over and over with like skateboarding and bands and all that.
Yeah, man.
It's the people who I think, or the bands or collectives that decide we can play nice with everybody in the scene, but we don't want to be big figures in this existing organization.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try something different. Let's do something outside of it. Or at the very least, let's not be beholden to that group think.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, people talk about scenes, and it's just like, I used to think a scene was the coolest thing, you
Yeah.
know, like especially with music, you want to be part of the scene.
Yeah,
You wanted to
yeah.
be, and you wanted people to know you, and you wanted people to respect you and support your shit, and you support their shit. But not a lot of growth came out of that when you stay in that bubble.
Yeah.
So I try to stay outside of the bubble, which makes me ignorant on a lot of things going on and out of touch on a lot of things. But also, I don't have the time or the physical stamina or the emotional energy
Yeah.
to fully immerse myself in a scene and try to, shape a scene and be a tastemaker in a scene.
Yeah.
I have no interest in that. So I'd rather just have fun doing my own shit. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, I'll stop doing it. Like that, you know what I mean?
Well, you stay doing cool things. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate you coming in. This is definitely one of the conversations I was looking forward to having.
Hell yeah. Thanks, dude.
I hope you've had a great time. Guys, y'all check out Isaac Kozell every Sunday night, part of the Dream Team production team for Proving Ground. How often can we see you at Stone vs. Drunk vs. Sober?
Stone versus Drunk versus Sober is every third Wednesday at 8 p.m. at the Hi Ho Lounge. Then Proving Ground every Sunday, 8 p.m. Hi Ho Lounge. Those are the two, and then we have Wait What, the comedy drinking game show. I would say if anything, just follow me on Instagram at Casanova_magazine, or just check out isaackozell.com because I have all my shows and stuff listed there,
Yeah.
and I try to keep that updated as much as possible.
That's
So.
what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, Isaac Kozell, thank you very much for coming on Under the Influencers.
Thanks, buddy.
You bet.
Thank you.
All right.